Hey, everybody. This is Robbie Samuels, and I'm super excited to have you checking out the No More Bad Zoom checklist, which is important because we have suffered. We have suffered a lot of bad Zoom lately. And if you are putting out great content in the world, I want to make sure that people actually tune in and feel really engaged both with you, with the content, and with each other, or else they may not continue to tune in. So, let's get started. This is a few options here. You'll see on the right side of your screen, this is the PDF that you probably already have access to. If you somehow don't and you only got access to this video, you'll find the document at bit.ly no more bad Zoom. And of course, the video is no more bad Zoom video, which is me walking you through this document because I wrote it a little bit cryptic. If you've been coming to my free weekly virtual happy hours, you probably picked up a couple of these tips. If you are in my 4-week experiential program, you're learning a lot of this, but this is a way for you to learn this, and you're also welcome to share this. There's no opt-in required. I want to be helping folks, and there's some ways for folks to stay connected with me, which I'll share at the end here. But before we go any further, I want to just tell you that what you're going to be looking at are settings at zoom.us. In fact, you should probably go right now and log in to zoom.us to check that out and see right along with me. So you can just follow along with me as we make these adjustments. You can make them right in your account. Now, the Zoom settings on this PDF are in the order in which they appear, at the moment at least, at the zoom.us. And on the right side of the screen, at the end of this, I will explain to you what these tips mean if you aren't familiar with them already. So let's get started. You're going to log in to zoom.us and you're going to go to settings, which is a feature on the left side of the screen. You'll see a settings option. And when you're in settings, you're going to start going through, and the first section is called schedule a meeting. So what's the first thing here we want to do? We want to turn things on. So unless the word off appears, I'm asking you to enable, to turn on what it is that is happening here. So I'm just going to make this a little bit wider so we can see. Oh, actually, we're pretty good. So here we go. Participant view video right here. So participant video, I would rather they have it on. So blue means on, gray means off. So you want to enable that. And that way they're prompted to turn their videos on as they come onto your call. Now, as we scroll down here, there are some other features that you can decide about, like join before host. I like it for my one-on-one calls. Enable meeting ID. I like to use my personal meeting ID, my PMI, for one-on-one calls, but not for group calls. That is essentially your phone number, and you'd be better off sharing not your direct number, but a copy, sort of like a Google Voice number. If you're doing a broadcast public event, you don't want to hand out your number. So that's why right here, using PMI when scheduling a meeting, I have that turned off. So if I'm scheduling a meeting, it's me and a few people, if not hundreds of people, in which case I don't want to use my personal meeting ID. So we're going to scroll down. The next thing we're looking for is mute participants upon entry. And if we pass something, you can always use Control F to go back and look for it. So here we go. Mute participants upon entry. So this is a default that I like to use because I think social etiquette wise, it's better if everyone sort of comes in and then you take control of the meeting and you moderate the conversation. If you are scheduling a lot of meetings through your Zoom account, you can turn this on to get reminders. The next thing we're looking for is play sound when join. So we scroll down here a little bit. I'll just mention you can read a little more about the encryption if that's something that's important to you. I like to have the chat on. I like to let participants save the chat. But they can click on the 3 dots in the bottom right corner of the chat box in order to save chat. I like the participants being able to private chat. This is something that you can toggle on and off even when in the meeting. Co-hosts can change that as well. Auto save chat. I was doing this. Obviously, if I'm hosting the meeting and recording it, the chat will be saved. But this is something that lets you auto save chats for meetings you're just a participant in. It turned out that I was just getting a lot of clutter, so I'd rather purposely save the chat when I need to. Play sound when join. I turn this off. Oof, it is, how annoying would that be? Bing, bing, bing. You really don't need to hear as people are coming in each time. File transfer, I like to turn this on. It just makes it a little easier. You can share through chat a file like a PDF. It's a good way to share an agenda. And even if people can't access Google Docs, for instance, they will be able to get this PDF and download it onto their computer. Let's see, the next thing on here is co-host. Very important. If you don't have this enabled and someone makes you a host, then you can't make them a co-host or vice versa. Now, a host is the only role that can manage breakout rooms. So you're probably going to have to give that host control to someone else if you're facilitating. But if you're facilitating, you still want to be able to do things like mute everybody, unmute all, mute all, manage the raise hand feature in the participant box, that kind of thing. So manage the polls. Those are all things that co-hosts can do. So you want to make sure that you at least have a co-host role, if not the host role. Of course, if you're the host role, you're also in charge of the breakout rooms. So turn that on. Polls, whether you know you're going to use them or not, this is one of those things I think you should turn on. That way, if you decide to make use of them, that feature is available to you. Screen sharing, for me, I have screen share host only. And the reason I have that is this is actually a security feature for me. When people come into my meeting, I don't want everybody to have access to sharing their screen. It's a way for me to sort of like curtail any jokesters or nefarious behavior. And any host or co-host automatically will have access to doing that, but the participants in general will not. Now, I can change that at any point. I can make someone a co-host and give them access, or using when you're using the host, when you're the host of the event or the co-host of the event, there's an option in the bottom left of the black screen that says security, and one of the options there that you can toggle on and off is participants can share their screen. So that's one way to, like, in the moment, make a decision. Annotation and whiteboard and autosave whiteboard, I just turn these all on because you don't know whether you're going to be using them. If you are going to use them, you want to have them available to you. If you're lending out your account to someone else, they might want to use them. Now, whiteboard is essentially just literally a whiteboard, and annotation is the sort of tools, like with Word, you can type, you can change the color, you can draw. So there's all these little fun features. You can actually do that just using annotation on a PDF or any kind of shared screen. So you could save some templates as PDFs, maybe let's say a 4-quadrant sort of design, and then just use that to illustrate something, sort of a step up from just using the whiteboard. But either way, make those available to you. Remote control, there is a way. I like this sometimes if I'm working with someone, I'm trying to teach them something. It's easier for me to reach in and change what they're doing on their screen. And then they'll see the steps, but also I don't have to, sometimes trying to walk someone through those steps can be so hard, but just having them watch you do it could be really helpful. But this way they don't have to give me passwords and things like that. It all autofills on their computer. There's a few use cases where this is handy, so I like to have it turned on. Now, nonverbal feedback. I was just talking to someone who said, I don't know, I was running a meeting and the raised hand and the yes, no, and go faster, go slower, that wasn't available in the participant panel. And the reason it wasn't available is because this wasn't turned on. So if you want to use those features, which I think are excellent and very helpful, you want to turn that on. Now, do note that as the host, you aren't going to see the raised hand option because you don't raise your own hand. But if you see the yes, no option, then they have the raised hand option. All participants will see it. So just know that. That's one way to know whether that's turned on or not. Now, this one is another one of these off. I want this turned off. This is a safety feature as far as I'm concerned. If I remove someone, I don't want them to rejoin. If I remove them, it's for a reason, and I don't want them to just like sneak back in. Now, when you're looking as the host or co-host at the screen, let's say you're looking at the gallery view, if you go in the top right corner of anybody's video, you can see 3 dots, and when you click the 3 dots, you'll see a bunch of options, including you can make them a co-host, you allow them to record, you can spotlight them, and towards the very bottom, there is a remove option and a report option. And so that's how you remove somebody. And if you have it set like this, where it's disabled, people can't come back in. I like to allow participants to rename themselves because one of the things I like to do is have people actually update their name to say like their location or sometimes some other keyword that might help with sorting them into different breakout rooms. So that's always pretty handy. I think you should have this turned on. I'm not sure exactly what Zoom would do, but you should be able to report participants to Zoom. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they'd have to like not be able to register. No idea what that actually does. But you want to have all the options you can to make your community feel secure. Now, breakout rooms. This is something else that people often forget to enable. They didn't even know they had it. In fact, this was me a long time ago. I remember like I was playing with Zoom, I was doing one-on-one meetings, and then I heard about this breakout room feature, and I didn't think I had that feature. I thought it came with some upgrade, and I didn't realize that it came with the plan that I have, and I have like the pro plan. Well, actually now they made it available also to the free plan. So you have this. If you have a Zoom account, if you can log into zoom.us, you have the breakout feature, which is very cool. So go ahead and enable that. And this will allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. I haven't actually found it very helpful to do the pre-assigning. I think there are a few use cases where I find it would be helpful. So I want to give that, leave that up as an option. Closed captioning, I've actually been beta testing this program that's offered through rev.com. I've been talking to some other third-party companies about the live captioning of Zoom calls. I think it's something we should definitely be paying attention to and giving as much accessibility to the work that we're doing to people who might be deaf or hard of hearing. So that's important. Likewise, depending on the communities you're working in, you might want to give people options to save the captions. Language interpretation is another thing to look into. This would be live interpretation. This is something that I've seen happen really successfully at in-person events, but now you can offer it online as well. So let's say you had a Spanish speaker and you had a interpreter who spoke Spanish and English. They would basically do a live translation, which is allowing that person who speaks Spanish only to participate fully in a conversation where it's taking place in English. So, accessibility is important to me. I'm always looking for new ways to bring these resources to lots of people. The group HD, I have it turned off, but each individual person can change to HD quality. I haven't seen a huge difference when I've done this. It does take more bandwidth, so for some people this just wouldn't make sense. I actually have good bandwidth, so it seems to be fine. Next one over here is virtual background. Now, let people enable it, but I just want to say my 2 cents is that generally it doesn't look great unless you have a green screen. So I would use it for fun, but I wouldn't use it for anything serious. And we scroll down here, there's a few other options here for you to think about. Stereo, I actually tested out stereo. Half the people liked it and half the people didn't like it, so I'm not using stereo right now. And then we get to the waiting room. Now, this is an optional feature. I think there are times when it makes a lot of sense and times when it's kind of annoying. Now, here's the thing. Turn it on because then you'll have the option to use it. If you are using it all the time, make sure that you disable waiting room when you get in the room. Now think of this as a teacher. If you were a teacher, you would tell students, if you see the classroom doors closed, I'm in there setting up. I might be writing the day's lessons on the whiteboard. So until I open the door, just wait in the hallway, right? So let's say 3 students arrive while you're setting the room up. Those 3 students wait in the hallway. They're in the waiting room. And when you're ready, you go over and you open the door and you prop it open. And those 3 students come right in, but so does everybody else who comes in over the next couple of minutes. I think that's the key, is that if you do use the waiting room, either all the time or just for some events, turn off the waiting room as soon as everyone gets there. Because as soon as you get there, I should say, because obviously it's a lot to keep track of. And I've heard these stories of people and participants waiting for 5, 10, or even 15 minutes in the waiting room, or someone leaving because their Wi-Fi, needing to rejoin the call, and they get stuck in the waiting room because the host forgets to look for them. So I think it's worth having. It's also great if you are going to use it to customize the title, logo, and description. So if you click here, you'll see that I changed it from the waiting room to see you in a few minutes, tidying up and queuing up some tunes. And then down here, you have an option to write some text. So I wrote a little tip, which is basically the tip I just described to you about turning off the waiting room once you are all set up. And you can do that from the security panel that's at the bottom of the screen. As the host or co-host, you will see that. Now let's see, so I'm going to close that. And then the last thing that was optional, so you can decide whether or not to use it. The last thing I want to mention on here which is not also in the Zoom settings doc, is to allow live streaming of meetings. If you've been wondering about this, this is sort of a more advanced thing to do. If you turn this on, you'll have the option to live stream to Facebook, Workplace by Facebook, YouTube, or a custom streaming service. So I have my custom check mark because that's what makes the beta live captioning from rev.com work. So I hope that all makes sense to you. And of course, if you have any questions, you can come and chat with me at robbie@robbiesamuels.com. I'd be happy to talk to you through things. And now I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Zoom tips on the right side of the screen here. So I mentioned earlier the personal meeting ID. That's essentially a number you want to really protect. If you wrote your phone number on a bathroom stall wall and you started getting prank calls, you probably wouldn't be that surprised. That's kind of what's happening as people have started taking their Zoom links and posting them all over the web in really public spaces on their personal wall, their Facebook, on Twitter, in public Facebook groups. Not a good idea. So if you're going to use your personal meeting ID, be very careful where you share it. I only use mine for one-on-one calls with clients, with colleagues, or with podcast guests. I think it's easy. I have a sort of a shortened URL that's easy to remember, but I don't use it for any of the group meetings. So that's something to think about. If you are going to use the waiting room, take a moment to personalize it like we just described using that customizing option. Arrive 3 to 5 minutes before everyone else is expected so you can kind of be ready and set. I like to play music as people come in. This for me is actually a social etiquette thing. People are muted as they arrive. I'm playing a little bit of music, and then that kind of keeps the sidebar conversations to zero while we're waiting for people to all arrive. Otherwise, people, let's say these first 3 people start a conversation with me, and then more people come in, and now I can't really greet the new people, and they're walking into a conversation thinking they're running late. Everyone's always a little awkward about, like, am I early? Am I too late? Meanwhile, like, the group starts fishbowling and watching this small conversation, and it's just hard as a facilitator to broaden the conversation to everyone. So if you're curious about how to play music, here are the basics. You click on share screen. At the very top of share screen, you click on advanced, and right below the word advanced, you will see music or computer sound only. And then you hit share, and now your computer sound is tied to Zoom. Now, anything that happens on your computer is going to get shared, including any notification noises. So if you do have notifications, turn them off for your email, your calendar, Slack, whatever it is. Just make sure those are all turned off so you don't have a weird bings happening. And then choose a music player. I use Amazon Music. You can use Pandora. You can use let's see. There's a few different ones: iTunes, Spotify, and then manage the volume of the music within the music player. And you'd have to have it pretty low. Realize people who are wearing headphones are going to hear it much louder. So that's just something to play around with. The other thing I like to do as people are coming in is to write some text in the chat. If you repeat this over and over again, this is something good to have. If you have a co-host who's helping you manage things, they could be copying and pasting this message. There's 2 versions of the message. One says, welcome, we'll get started in a few minutes. Please change your name to include your location. Click the 3 dots at the top right of your picture and select rename. Enjoy the music. So that's for people who are coming in before we get started. And then I have a variation that basically says the same thing, except that it doesn't say we'll be starting in a few minutes and doesn't mention the music because we're already underway. Now you have to keep copying and pasting and repeating this message because when people first come in, they don't see the previous text messages. So you have to, alert them to this option as they come in. And I think it's nice for people to know where other people are calling in from. The letter C for chat moderation. So I like to, if I'm the one presenting, I want to be spotlighted because the spotlight is what records on the replay. But I like to actually change my view to gallery view, where you can sort of the Brady Bunch view. That's because I want to be able to see sort of body language for the group. I like seeing the audience. If I have a moderator or maybe some people call this a Zoom producer, the person who's sort of managing things behind the scenes. This is a role that I play for a lot of my clients. Then if they hold up the letter C, which by the way is their right hand, it looks backwards to them, but when I'm seeing it, it's mirrored. So if they're holding up a backwards C, I'm going to see a forward C. So their right hand, hold up your right hand right now and you'll see what I mean. It looks backwards to you, but when they see it, it'll be correct. When they hold that up, I'll know there's something happening in the chat that needs to be addressed, and then I can pause, at the next right juncture and ask them, and then they can read the question aloud, which is much better than me pausing every few minutes and kind of trying to take a minute to look away from the camera and just scroll my eyes up and down and say, oh, let's just see what's going on in chat. Meanwhile, people are trading, recipes or something. So that's what the letter C is. And also just a reminder about that mirroring, things to think about. You can change whether or not you're mirrored, and that has to do with what you see. It has nothing to do with the audience sees. They're always going to see you the way they would if they were standing in front of you, right? They wouldn't see the mirrored version. Jazz hands for me is a way to get the audience, the participants, to give some sort of visual response. So if everyone's muted, how do we let people know, yay, we're so excited, that was great, thank you. So using jazz hands is really helpful for that, and it's a nice visual to set everyone sort of doing that at once. The speaker view versus gallery view. So I've mentioned this a couple of times. If you're not familiar, it's in the top right corner. You can toggle, either have a big image, that's the speaker view, or toggle again and have all the little boxes, sort of like the Brady Bunch type thing. And then neither one of those changes what's being recorded. That's actually, I just want to say this way, that's only changing your view, not changing what everyone else sees. So if you change, even as a host, if you change from speaker view to gallery view, that's not changing what everyone else sees. Every participant has the ability to change that for themselves. Now, Spotlight versus Pin. Spotlight is a feature that's only available for hosts and co-hosts. And if I spotlight a participant, then everyone's going to see them big. It's going to force everyone to see that speaker view of that one person. And it also changes what the replay is recording. So the replay is recording the spotlight view. Even if I toggle my own screen back to the gallery view, it's still going to only record what's on the spotlight. Now, pin is a feature that every participant has, and they can change their own view to pin on one person. So even if someone, the speaking goes back and forth, and they're like, this is dizzying, I don't want to follow the camera back and forth, I want to like pin it to the person who's presenting, they can just do that. So even if the spotlight isn't being used, you have the ability to, as a participant, to make quite a few adjustments. This is one of the things I talk about all the time. Speaking of participants, there is a participants panel that you should become familiar with, and you should also make sure that your participants are familiar with, because in the bottom of that panel will be that raise hand feature, the yes, no, the go faster, go slower, and a few other options. And I think it's important for them to know that it exists. And what I've been doing lately is actually walking participants through opening that panel up, opening the chat panel up, and having them ready, showing them that if they want, they can merge that panel to their meeting window, which makes things nice and tidy, or they can have it floating. But having it open, and letting them know that when we get to the Q&A, we're going to be using that raised hand feature rather than people just unmuting. I think that's just part of good facilitation, which is my next and almost my last point. Good online facilitation is so key. You can have great virtual event design, and that's poorly executed because you don't have good online facilitation skills. So there's so many little nuances. There's so many little things to practice and keep getting 5% better. Last point before I tell you a little bit more about how we can stay in touch. Lock meetings only for one-on-one calls. If you lock meetings when you get a bigger crowd and someone has Wi-Fi issues and has to come back in, they're not going to be able to come back in, and you probably won't remember that they can't come back in. And you may not even have noticed that they logged off and they're having trouble. Now, if it's one-on-one, I think it's a good idea to lock the meeting, because that link I use a lot. I use my personal meeting ID for all my one-on-one calls, so a lot of people have that link, and I don't want my next appointment to come in a little bit early. The times that this has happened, usually that person who comes a little bit early is like very embarrassed. They interrupt my meeting. The best way to avoid that little faux pas moment on both our parts is for me to take the time to lock the meeting when I'm having it one-on-one. Obviously, if the person I'm meeting with has Wi-Fi issues and needs to come back in, I still have to remember to unlock the room for them, but it's going to be really obvious that that's happening because they're the only person in the room with me. So that was a lot of information. Now you know how to use this doc. You can share this doc. You can tell people how to get there. At the very top here, the instructions are what you're looking at right now. That's the video. But if you just share this document, you can tell people to go to bit.ly, no more bad Zoom, all lowercase, and they can check this out. And on the bottom, if you want to reach me, I'm at robbie@robbiesamuels.com. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern, I host a free virtual happy hour. I know these are a really fun way to network and to discover best practices and new ways to design engaging virtual experiences. You can find that at nomorebadzoom.com. It's a free series. You can sign up. You get a Zoom link attached to your email, and it will be the same link every single week. So whether you come once or come every single week, we have people who do, you will always learn something new, and you will meet awesome people. We've been having 50 or 60 people at a time. That keeps getting a little bit bigger. We've had several hundred people sign up for the series. We do a lot of breakout rooms, practice a lot of online facilitation. The background stuff, the producer role is something that actually we have someone apprenticing each week, and the apprentices are actually members of the 5% Advantage program, which is a course that I offer, which is a 4-week experiential program that teaches people online facilitation and virtual event design. And so it's so experiential that they actually get to practice running a show from behind the scenes at one of my weekly events. So if you want to know more about any of these things, you'll see the links at the bottom there, the 5percentadvantage.com, which also, if you go to robbiesamuels.com, you'll see it on there as well. And so there you go. You can reach out that way. And I hope this was helpful. We're all part of this campaign, right? The whole idea here is to have no more bad Zoom. That is so key. We've had enough. We just don't want any more. Thank you so much for watching this, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Cheers.